You've heard the spin, now hear the truth. Welcome to Lost on Web.
Don't get me wrong, this all started quietly enough. U.S. diplomats meeting with Iranian officials in Vienna. World leaders calling it a political conflict. And for 75 years that worked. Everyone ignored the hatred, the calls for genocide, the demands for destruction. But now things are getting ugly. Missiles flying over Iranian rooftops. Israeli fighter jets targeting airports and harbors. Sirens blaring through the night. People screaming death to Israel. Because according to the Iranian president, Israel could disappear tomorrow and nothing would change. So let's dive into part 2. Now, this might get a little messy, but the truth always does. So stick with me. Now, that's a bold statement, and I understand why. Every week you hear the same message. Jews are infidels. They should be expelled from your country. The Zionist entity must be destroyed. Then one day you step outside and see the poster, Death to Israel. When a young woman walks into a pizza shop carrying a bomb, she doesn't do it because she hates pizza. She does it because she believes it's her religious duty. That's the difference between fanatics and freedom fighters. Fanatics believe they're doing God's work. And here's the disturbing truth. Fanatics are always willing to die for their beliefs, but they also kill for them. You look around, confused. Are these ideas extreme? Is it wrong to want your country back? Maybe you're just misinformed. Perhaps this is all propaganda. You can't sign a treaty to end religious hatred. You can't negotiate with people who believe their God commands them to destroy you. And yes, I know this sounds like an exaggeration. You've probably heard it all before. But here's the hard truth. Israel's enemies aren't looking for peace. They're looking for total control. Once they get that, they won't stop until every Jew is dead. And that's why the war will never end. They say Allah promised those lands to the descendants of Abraham, not the state of Israel. Both sides are led by fanatical regimes. And both sides are locked into a cycle of violence. That's not normal. It's a disaster waiting to happen. They see those lands as Muslim lands and the Palestinians as Muslims under occupation. And listen, I'm not here to debate theology. And when they launch rockets, the world calls for calm. They say things like, stop the violence, don't make things worse. But here's the thing. Nobody cares about Iran's victims. For the past 7 decades, they've launched missile after missile, bomb after bomb, and each attack is met with the same response. Condemnation, a Security Council meeting, and then it's forgotten. But what happens when Israel retaliates? Suddenly, they're the villains. They're acting out of proportion. And that's not fair. I'm just pointing out what Muslims believe. It's not about territory. It's about identity. Yes, they defend themselves, but they're defending themselves against a region that wants them dead. It's not a normal conflict. It's a holy war, and it's only getting worse. The Jewish state is seen as an existential threat to Islam itself. And that's why millions of Muslims call for its destruction. It's not about politics. It's about religion. Lost on Web is a new channel exposing what they won't say out loud. If you want to see more, subscribe for updates. So it's not about politics. It's about God. They don't hate Israel as a political entity. They hate Israel as a Jewish entity. Now, when millions of people believe something is a sin, there's no reasoning with them. You can't debate someone who believes God spoke to them personally. And that's where we are today. Iran's supreme leader receives messages from God. The Israelis are infidels, and they must be driven into the sea. And the only way to do that is through jihad. And that's where things get really messy. So you search the web, but everything you find seems to point in the same direction. And slowly you realize there's no middle ground here. This is a black and white issue. Either you're with Israel or you're with the resistance. And maybe that's the problem. These wars are rooted in religion. I say that because the hatred isn't limited to Iran. From Tehran to Gaza to Damascus to parts of Europe, radical Islam refuses to accept Jews living freely anywhere. In France, you've got mobs chanting death to the Jews. In Britain, you've got mosques preaching genocide. In Germany, you've got anti-Semites waving the Palestinian flag. This isn't about politics. It's a global movement. It's a war on Jews everywhere, and it's about destroying Israel. These weren't secret messages buried in ancient texts. They were shouted from the minbar, the pulpit where imams preach to thousands every Friday. There's just one problem. What do these verses actually mean? Is this a religious war that only ends when one side is wiped off the map? Now that's pretty messed up, but before you dismiss it as crazy talk, remember, This is exactly how they justify suicide bombings. And yes, the world knows about it. Suicide bombings are wrong. But let's be honest, most people don't care why they're happening. They just want to condemn the violence. But if you want to stop suicide bombers, you have to understand why they become martyrs. Well, if you ask most scholars, they'll tell you to ignore them. Some might even call them extremist. Here's the thing, though. If these ideas are so extreme that they're not allowed to be discussed, then who gets to decide which ideas are acceptable? And why is this even possible? Or is this all part of the agenda? Leaders don't usually threaten to wipe other countries off the map. So let's put this in perspective. We went from peace talks to full-blown war in just a few weeks. And the big question everyone has, what really happened? How did we get here? If you think this is about borders or religion, you've got the wrong memo. And here's why. For decades, world leaders called this a political conflict. Iran wants influence. Israel wants security, peace talks, treaties, UN resolutions. This hatred didn't start in 1948. It didn't start with nuclear programs or missile strikes. It goes back 1,400 years to the foundations of radical Islamic doctrine. Listen to these words. Do not take the Jews and Christians as friends. Whoever among you takes them as friends is an enemy of Islam. To extremists, Israel isn't just a nation, it's a symbol. A reminder of a people they believe should have been destroyed long ago. That belief fuels the violence. It's all ignoring the real problem. This isn't just politics, it's ideology, it's religion. And for the extremists running Iran, it's about wiping Israel off the map, period. So let's cut through the lies, because if they're telling you this is a political issue, they're not telling you the whole story. And no, this isn't a fringe theory. These ideas aren't some obscure verses buried deep within ancient texts. They're front-page headlines and Friday sermons across the Middle East. Think this is about politics? Think again. Iran's supreme leader isn't hiding his goals. He broadcasts them on TV every Friday. He calls Israel a cancerous tumor and openly says it must be destroyed. Since 1979, Iran's leaders have made their mission clear. Destroy Israel. Not negotiate. Not compromise. Total annihilation. But don't worry, they'll spare you the details. Now, if you've been paying attention, you know there's always more to this story. The first time I visited the Middle East, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Now imagine you're a young Muslim growing up in Tehran. We live in a postmodern world. We scoff at absolutists and totalitarians. We celebrate diversity and debate. But this isn't a debate. In the end, these wars aren't about geopolitics. They're about religion. So why do Iranians hate Israel so much? Well, it's simple. They believe Israel is occupying Muslim lands. Today, millions of Muslims believe the existence of Israel is a sin. That's why the war will never end. That's why Iran supports Hamas and Hezbollah and Houthi. And if you think this is about oil, you're missing the bigger picture. And that's why this war will never end. So the world keeps telling us this is a normal conflict. But what makes it normal? Both sides are armed to the teeth. While the world sleeps, Iran keeps building missiles. While we distract ourselves with elections, Iran's proxies stockpile weapons. Since 1948, Israel has been on defense. Iran keeps building weapons. Terror groups keep preparing attacks. Israel fights to survive, but the world keeps pretending this is a normal conflict. All right, that's it for now.